the last couple of weeks now, I've really felt like the cat that's got the cream. And because Rega reached out to me and asked me if I would like to try out their NAIA turntable. Well, who wouldn't? This is a turntable that is definitely not for everyone, but it's really a statement of how far you can push turntable technology. And it's an amazing backstory. Now, for those of you who haven't seen my video on the P10 from Rega and why I chose it for the listening room, we will put a link at the top and also in the description below so you can see all the technical details. I don't want to go into that here, but what I will do is play a number of records at the end where I will compare one turntable from another. And I know it's only YouTube and I know it's only really for fun, but it'll be interesting to see if my in-room microphones can sort of pick up the very subtle differences I want to talk about in this video. So without any ado, let's get moving. Let's move on with this idea. I mean, we've got two turntables. The NAIA, well, the story behind that is that Rega, for many years, developed what they called the NAIAD turntable. And this was the epitome of what is possible in the technology. And again, I mentioned that in my previous video, so I don't want to go into it too much, except for the fact that the NAIAD was extremely expensive. It took, for example, over 200 man-hours just to assemble one. Hard to believe, but true. So it was astronomically expensive at around £30,000, I believe. But also, they just couldn't manufacture it. It was just too complicated, too difficult, too time-consuming. So they basically designed the P10 as a kind of alternative version to the NAIAD. But then Phil Freeman, the CEO of Rega, who's always looked up to Roy Gandhi as the guru of turntables, and Roy Gandhi, you may remember, is the person who established Rega in the first place. And he looked at the P10 turntable and said, how can we improve it? Now, it's important to remember that Phil Freeman was a watchmaker from background. So precision, the pursuit of chronological perfection is something that's built into him. So he literally took every single component, looked at everything and decided, okay, how can I make this better? Okay, so here we are. We've got the P10 on the left and the NAIA on the right. I'll just take the covers off so you can see them a bit better. Now, the thing about these covers is they're really a very clever design, actually, and they protect the turntable. The only comment I have is that you need to be careful for static. Don't put them down on a couch or something where they can collect dust. Anyway, that having been said, we have the two turntables. Now, they look almost exactly the same at first glance, but the differences are really quite striking. For a start, you've got the carbon, graphene coated carbon top and bottom of the Tancast 8 foam on the NAIA, whereas on the Rega you have another product. I'm not sure what it is, but it's very stiff. But it doesn't always also give the same appearance. The turntables are a little bit thinner. The P10 is a little bit thinner than the NAIA. The pickup arms, I'm just going to close them up a little bit just to make sure that we are safe. The pickup arms are visually identical. This has got a slightly different titanium weight than this one, but they're both titanium. But inside the arms, of course, they are very different. The NAIA has a titanium central single piece support and bearing on the inside, whereas the Rega P10 has a steel one. But for the rest, the single cast aluminium pickup arm is more or less the same. Let's have a look at underneath the turntable, because here is where we see some major differences. We have, on the one hand here, a single disc to supporting the turntable, and our ceramic plate, as you can see, but also just 2 bands surrounding the aluminium support system, pulley system, if you like. Whereas on the NAIA, the first thing that sort of grabs our attention is the fact that the aluminium support, or turntable platter, if you like, underneath that supports it, is bigger, but it's also cut away to reduce mass. Everything is about reducing mass. And this reminds me a little bit to the early designs of the Rega turntables, where they went for sort of centrifugal systems. And I think there's a sort of a vision back to that. But what was Phil Freeman really doing? He picked up the 10 to make it better, to make it as good as it possibly could be, as close as to the NAIA as possible, if not better. So the things he changed were the supports holding the motor. These are a different kind of support we have now. The motor is now with 3 belts instead of the 2. Instead of a single carbon plate, we've got 2. I mean, everything. He looked at every single component, even underneath where the feet are. Underneath here, you see that these feet are cut away to reduce the mass. Everything is about reducing mass, but increasing rigidity, because we want to cut all the vibrations that could be generated here from getting to the base of this pickup arm. After all the amazing engineering in the arm, where it's almost immeasurable, the amount of play in those bearings, that they want to make sure that the stylus is collecting all the data from the groove without any interference from vibrations from anywhere else. So this is it visually. The main difference is, for the rest it looks very, very similar. Okay, so I'm just going to pop the turntable back, and you'll see also the small difference here. The turntable on the NAIA has a larger cutout in the middle, and I don't know whether you can see this, but underneath there's a different shape profile, giving more of a centrifugal effect, and that pops on like that, or just put its little felt mat. The felt mats are very thin, but they apparently work really, really well acoustically. If you do clean your record or give it a wipe with it on, sometimes it does tend to come off with the turntable. Now here is the P10 turntable. You note the smaller hole here in the middle. It actually feels a bit heavier. I might be wrong, and it has a different kind of ridge profile. I might be wrong, but it feels a little bit heavier. We'll have to check there. And here's the felt mat that goes on there. So there you have it, the 2 turntables. Well, the long and the short of it is that they've done a fantastic job, because it's not just about making the P10 better or more perfect. It's about making it more perfect, but also affordable, and most important of all, manufacturable, if that's a word. i.e., they've got to be able to make it. It's one thing to design something, but to design something that can be made again and again and again to the same very high standard is the really big challenge. Now, why would you do this? You would do it because you can. You have an R&D budget that allows you, but you do it so that you can be absolutely sure that by the time you retire, you leave behind you a statement turntable that you know works as well as it possibly can. But what I also know is that when you spend time modifying, changing, improving little components, little parts, like for example the motor assembly, how it's fixed to the board, the chassis, will that make a difference? I don't know. Would, for example, changing the bearing assembly from brass to ceramic, which they've done here, fantastic achievement. Ceramic is extremely hard. Both pieces, the spindle is also ceramic, so the whole bearing assembly for the turntable is ceramic. Would changing that from a very high quality brass and steel to ceramic make a difference? I don't know. Would it make it last longer? Presumably yes, because it's very hard and should last forever. Would changing that central bearing assembly and the pickup arm to titanium make a difference? I don't know. But the point is, if you do each of these things in turn, bit by bit, the total combination of those improvements hopefully would result in an audible improvement. It certainly results in a price difference. The NAIA today is about twice the price of the P10. I mean, not quite, I'm exaggerating a bit, but if the P10, for example, is 6,500 with an Aphelion cartridge, and the NAIA is 12,500, and that's pounds I'm talking about here. Let me grab my notes and just see what I said it was. So roughly 8,000 euros for the P10 with the Aphelion 2, and 14,600 for the NAIA. It is, roughly 2,000, twice as much, or 6,000 euros more. So it's not for everyone. The P10 is not for everyone. It's a really, really expensive turntable, and I only bought it because I had the budget, because it's for the listening room and because people are traveling a long way to come and hear the turntable in combination with our Sibelius loudspeakers. And so it's obvious that we want the very best for them. But the question now is the NAIA better? Well, this is really what I need to talk about. So what do we do first of all? I said to the team in Riga, if you really want me to compare the two, I need to have the same cartridges, because I actually didn't have the Aphelion 2. I had what they call the Apheta 3. These are really difficult names to remember. The Apheta 3 was the cartridge I had. And I was delighted with the P10 with the Apheta. I thought, wow, it's amazing. And my daughter has the P3, and I know somebody's got a P8. I mean, there are differences, but all of them play records really, really well. And that's the great thing about Riga. You can buy a P1, play all your records, knowing you're not going to do any damage. And if one day you feel the need or you have the budget to upgrade, you can do so. And you know that some of the R&D that's gone to take place on the NAIA will have actually impacted all the way down the chain. Now, I hasten to say I'm not paid a single cent from Riga. They don't know what I'm going to say, and they have no influence over what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you what I think. And that's the important thing. All they've done is kindly lent it to me so I can share it with you. The way I see it is, just because a Formula One racing car or a McLaren F1 exists doesn't mean we've got to own one. And I don't feel angry about people who own them. That's their choices. That's their luck, if you like. All I know is there's a lot of fun and challenges in developing the technology to build one. And that's the bit that I really, really like. So what were the sound differences? This is what you want me to tell you. Well, first of all, when I first set them up, because we put identical cartridges in the P10, so you put the Aphelion 2 in the P10 and also in the NAIA, and to make sure they were the same, and Riga very kindly came over, Bram from the distributors in Belgium came over, and he set them both up so they were identical, the tracking force and everything. So we got the same cartridge. We decided to put them through the same ARIA phono stage from Riga, and they're obviously going into my Sugden preamplifier. So everything is identical. And at first, when I first heard it, I thought, you know what? I can't really hear a big difference. But then after Bram left and I settled down and I started listening, I just enjoyed listening to the NAIA and the P10, because what I noticed was the Aphelion cartridge made a massive difference from my previous cartridge. What are the differences? The Apheta 3 was a fantastic cartridge. I would not have known better, but the immediate difference I picked up on was that some of my records have picked up some dust and you get a few pops and crackles. When I played them with an Aphelion 2, they seemed to be playing much, well, getting a lot more information out of the groove, in the sense that the crackles and pops had all but disappeared. Now, I didn't know, and I still don't know quite how that works or what's going on here. Is it because it's slightly less bright than the Apheta 3? I don't know. But generally, everything sounded smoother. It sounded more vinyl. And I think that's important. So I did phone Simon at Rega and ask him what could be the reason for that. He thought it could be a number of things, because the Aphelion 2 and the Apheta 3 share some similarities. I think that the stylus is the same and some of the technologies are the same. It's just that the Aphelion 2 is made to a higher precision, but the main difference is the Aphelion 2 has a boron cantilever, which is supposed to be stiffer and lighter and then able to transmit a little bit more information. And that's the critical thing, isn't it? Because the whole of this exercise is to find a system that can let the diamond sit in that groove and get all the data it needs to get out of the groove. And so I found that listening with the Aphelion 2, everything sounded a little bit better. And it damn well should be, because it's about £2,000 more expensive, or €2,000 more expensive. I mean, the Aphelion, I was just looking it up this morning, seems to be retailing in Europe for about €4,290. So somewhere around the $5,000, I believe. And the Apheta 3 is around the $1,750. So it's considerably cheaper. But if you're going to go Rega and you want to go with the cartridges, for goodness sake, order the turntables with the cartridge fitted, because there's always a significant saving. And I calculated it's probably at least €1,000 saving, and you haven't got the hassle of installing it yourself. So yes, I found quite a big difference between the two turntables. So what did I listen to? Well, first of all, I did what every hi-fi person does. I put on the Essential Stevie Ray Vaughan double album, listening through some of that, and obviously the Tin Pan Alley track. Now, I can't use this as a comparison on the what you're going to hear in a minute for copyright reasons. They'll just block it, so that's not possible. But that was a very interesting listen. And then I listened to the Scheherazade from Rimsky-Korsakov. Now, this is recorded by my good friend from Chasing the Dragon, Mike Valentine, and he very kindly lets me use these recordings to do these comparisons. So this is a really high quality recording. And when I played the Scheherazade, I just noticed that there was a little bit more depth on the NAIA in the lower bass, and the mids, especially the violins, just seem to be a tiny bit fuller. But we're talking really, really small differences. I didn't notice them at first. Only after prolonged listening and making those comparisons did I begin to notice. And in fact, the album, when I first noticed it, was when I was preparing for the Exodus recording. On the Exodus album, on Natural Mystic, again, sorry, I can't play it on this one because of copyright reasons. But on the Natural Mystic track, when listening to it on the NAIA, you got a thump actually in the base of my stomach. It's a bit like that feeling of going over a humpback bridge in a car. I actually got that punch. And with the P10, with exactly the same cartridge, remember, the bass was great, the detail was there, but that tiny little punch wasn't there. It was a little bit subdued. So it was a very slight difference. And again, the NAIA's mid-range seemed to be a little bit smoother. The vocals were a little bit further back. Was that because the bass is enhanced a bit? I don't know, but we're talking really tiny, tiny differences here. But enough to say that if I had the budget, I'm not going to buy the NAIA because I'm very happy with the P10. I might purchase the Aphelion 2 because I like the cartridge, but I'd have to listen to it again with the Apheta 3 to be sure, because it's just different, to be honest. But I'm not going to buy the NAIA because the price difference, and I have so few records, most of the time I'm streaming or playing CDs, that it's really here for my customers. And I really do believe the P10 is plenty good enough. Although if I was starting out today, and I could afford it, I would go for the NAIA, because also, to be honest, it looks a bit sexier, doesn't it? You know, with this sort of carbon effect is rather nice, and oh, it's graphene coated, okay, whatever. But it's just kind of knowing that you've got the very, very best that Rega can make. There's nothing more they can do to make a turntable get the data out of the vinyl. They can't. So anyway, the other track I listened to, Scheherazade, I'll play that in a minute. I also listened to a little bit of Jamiroquai. That was really fun to listen to, and I compared that. But I also want to compare, and I did listen to, obviously, the Clare Teal sings Ella, and because I've used that on a number of recordings before, I'm going to use that and start off with that with the comparison. So on that track you can really hear the thump of the bass, you've got a nice brightness of the brass, you've got her voice. I think if that track doesn't differentiate between the two, or the Scheherazade, I don't know what will. So I hope you found that useful. I hope you found it interesting. If you have been, thank you for watching. Enjoy the little clips at the end, and please put your comments back in below, and we will and answer as many questions as we can. And if you have been, thank you for watching, and enjoy the music. See you in the next video. Bye.
Deep